and any dispute will be arbitered by international arbitral forums applying these laws, international customary laws, and treaty obligations. Bilateral investment treaties, expropriation and compensation of foreign investment. As stated in the beginning of this paper, the next government will be inclined to restore the land to the original owners who have been dispossessed of it illegally and forcibly. It can do so by general proclamation on landholding, by expropriation of some of the illegally leased land, and through other legal devices. All this will have an effect of expropriation. Under customary international law, a state may only expropriate a foreign investment under 4 conditions. The major is for a public purpose. It is taken in accordance with applicable laws and due process. It is non-discriminatory, and a full compensation is paid. Similarly, the land deals themselves, the bilateral investment treaties, and the Washington Treaty all prescribe that in case of expropriation, the foreign investor must be paid an appropriate compensation. The real question is, what is an appropriate compensation, and who gets to determine it? It may be argued that the forum that determines the extent of compensation should be local, and the standards local due to domestic forum clause attached to some of the contracts. However, in reality, existing and past international arbitral disputes indicate that disputes under bilateral investment treaties could be launched internationally at first instance and are treated as cases of international treaty dispute despite the existence of local readdress mechanism. Examples in this context could be the case of Alex Genie, Eastern Credit Limited versus the Republic of Estonia, CMS Gas Transmission Company versus the Republic of Argentina, UCOS versus the Federation of Russia, and many others. According to a Unicad research, the cost of international arbitral dispute may range from $2 to $10 million in forum and lawyer fees alone. Some of the compensation claims include a $30 billion claim against the Federation of Russia in the case of UCOS expropriation, a $284 million awarded against the Czech Republic in the Loder case, $71 million awarded against the Republic of Ecuador in case of Occidental, $824 million awarded against the Republic of Slovakia in case of CSSOB, and the list goes on. The complications of an attempt of expropriation are not limited to one forum and one award. Cases of several awards under similar investments arising out of the same set of facts have also been recorded. In conclusion, it's more than apparent that getting justice to our disposed compatriots and restoring them to their homes and farmlands may be beyond the means of our poor country, our poor and aid-dependent country. Ethiopian people will not afford to claim back their land. What is being sold at a bargain price may not be bought back even with a reasonable compensation. Future Ethiopian governments may, however, still argue that they cannot be forced or expected to pay such extreme compensation claims for unjust, illegal and corrupt land deals entered by an illegitimate minority regime with investor colonialists. It may also adduce sufficient evidence to show the whole injustice and corruption to these deals. In this case, Ethiopia will be resisting an enforcement of an international arbitral award. Hence, we may have to look into the non-enforcement of international arbitral awards. Non-enforcement of international arbitral awards. In almost all international arbitral forums arising out of bilateral investment treaties and the Washington Convention on States Investor Disputes, the enforcement of arbitral awards is governed by the 1958 New York Convention on Recognition and Enforcement of Foreign Arbitral Awards. The treaty allows the award holder to enforce the award in any jurisdiction where the assets of the award debtor may be located. Under this treaty, there are very limited ways by which a state may resist an enforcement of an arbitral award. Article 5 of the Convention lists 7 grounds by which enforcement of an arbitral award may be resisted. 2 of these grounds may have some bearing to this discussion. That is, the matter is incapable of settlement by arbitration, and the award is contrary to public policy. As held by the Second Circuit Court of America, only few matters, like the act of the state, may not be capable of settlement by arbitration, but all commercial matters may be settled by arbitration. Possible cases the future government of Ethiopia may face in relation to these land deals can be squarely categorized as commercial matters, hence capable of settlement by international commercial arbitration. Moreover, the bilateral investment protection treaties have preemptively defined any possible disputes as commercial matters. The other ground of resisting enforcement of an arbitral award is the award is contrary to public policy. The meaning of the term, as interpreted by the Second Circuit Court of America, would mean the challenged award violates the forum's most basic notion of morality and justice. The High Court of Justice, Queen's Bench in England, similarly held that the challenged award to be contrary to public policy must involve more than mere inadvertence or mere violation of law. It must involve something which can be described as unconscionable or reprehensible. Likewise, the French Civil Procedure Code stipulates public policy in this case would mean French international public policy. The case of Ethiopian farmers and their forcible dispossession from their property may indeed represent a clear case of unconscionable and reprehensible practice. Let us therefore assume that the future government of Ethiopia succeeded in vacating a compensation award. Would that be the end of the matter? The second part of sub-article 5 of the New York Convention relates to vacated awards. It allows courts in rendering jurisdictions to refuse enforcement of awards set aside in the rendering jurisdiction. The interpretation of this article is very controversial. It was construed by some courts in some jurisdictions as allowing them a discretion on whether to enforce or refuse to enforce a vacated award, while in other jurisdictions it is construed to mean vacated awards are non-existent and hence cannot be relied upon for enforcement in any other jurisdiction. National legislation similarly reflects the division. These two opposing interpretations will therefore allow the investor colonialists to attempt to enforce their compensation claims wherever it may be accepted, even though it has been vacated as unconscionable award. In light of the facts and arguments presented, it can be safely concluded that the opportunity of resisting international arbitral award in form of compensation to foreign investors is extremely limited. Based on the treaty obligations of Ethiopia and the existing international laws, the future governments of Ethiopia are hand-tied if they attempt to reverse these land deals and devise a policy of restorative justice. Again, I would like to emphasize that what is being sold at a throwdown price cannot be claimed back with a reasonable compensation. I am therefore constrained to conclude what is going on in Ethiopia is neither development nor investment but a naked colonialism. Reforming laws in relation to water use, land use, environmental protection. According to international laws and bilateral investment treaties, expropriation of foreign investment is not limited to actually taking of the property. It includes indirect taking, where a measure has an impact of depriving substantial benefits of the property. Further, it may also include regulatory measures where the impact of the regulation affects the economic value of the asset. If, for example, the amount of water allocated to the investor is reduced to meet the other needs of the community, it may be held to be an expropriation on the right to operate the business. Another instance that may be defined as creeping expropriation could be policy measures like export restriction used to protect food security, including at the time of critical food shortage. Change in environmental laws, labor laws, land zoning may be defined as expropriation requiring compensation to the foreign investor. In the case of Ital Corporation versus Canada, the Canadian environmental law of banning gasoline additives was argued to be expropriation, which Canada settled by compensation. Similarly, in the case of Metho versus Mexico, a Mexican legislation which rezoned a landfill as a wildlife reserve was held to be an expropriation requiring a compensation. In conclusion, the land lease in Ethiopia was therefore in effect, the land lease in Ethiopia has therefore in effect freezed the laws in relation to labor, water use, land use, export of food products to 50 to 99 years in relation to the land lease to the so-called investors. This kind of deals have an adverse impact on the ability of the future generation to govern their country in line with the best interest of its people. And hence I am forced to ask this august assembly, what is freedom? If it is not the right and the ability of free people to govern themselves in their country as best suited to their conditions and aspirations. And also, what is colonialism, if it is not the loss of this ability? In conclusion, I suspect some of my Canadian audience may be asking themselves, is it my issue? Yes, it's everyone's issue. The past generation has fought and defeated the evils of colonialism, race prejudice, and purgatory together, after much struggle and untold sacrifice. Can we in this generation allow it to creep back into the life of the human community, disguised as investment? If the evil is allowed to creep back, where would it take us? Would it be limited to Ethiopia? Can it not take a different form and shape and manifestation and affect everyone else? I would close my arguments by quoting one of my favorite poets, Don John. No one is an island entire of itself. Everyone is a part of the main, a piece of the whole. Thank you.